Welcome everybody to the Oracle Analytics Summit Series and the Now is the Time for Digital Transformation of Finance Using the Power of Analytics session. We'll have a Q&A session at the end, but in the meantime, if you enter any questions you have through the Q&A functionality, then we'll try to answer them as we go or towards the end of the session. Next slide, please, Rich. I'd like to welcome both our speakers today, Rich Clayton from Oracle and Julie Harris from Accenture. So without any delays, I'd like to turn over to Rich. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for taking some time today to be with us. I think this is a pretty timely topic and hopefully relevant to your finance transformation. I joined Oracle through the Hyperion acquisition, where I ran product strategy, and prior to that was a corporate controller and CPA. And I'm really grateful to have a longtime partner and colleague and friend join from Accenture. Julie, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Rich. Delighted to be here and looking forward to our discussion this morning. It's great to finally get on a webcast with you to talk about digital transformation in finance. It's well overdue, I think.
Yeah, no question. It's a very exciting topic, and I think we've got a great program for each of you to sort of listen and learn and engage. And you know, I think first and foremost, on behalf of Oracle and Accenture, we hope you and your families are well and healthy, and we're happy that you've joined us today. We're going to make this an interactive format. We're going to have a couple of polls, ask you a few questions, and I've developed a few questions for Julie and I to explore with you today. So before we kind of dive into the content, what I'd like to do is just ask you all a few questions and get your perspective on really three questions. Should only take a couple seconds for you to answer. Maybe just provide us a little bit of perspective on where you are in your journey overall. Are you thinking about it? Have you already started a finance transformation journey? I would say finished is probably, hopefully no one ever says finished, but not planning, kind of where do you fit? And then the second question would be, the second question would be around how important is analytics and data? Hopefully everybody agrees that it's pretty important, but maybe not. And then where are you in exploring AI to improve the financial analytic process? I think we have found some great opportunities to share with you. We'd love to get your feedback, and also you know, hear where you're thinking you might be able to apply it. So we can do that through live Q&A towards the end of the session, but I thought we'd at least give a head start here. I'll just give it one more second, and then we'll end the poll for this morning. All right, I think we'll just like everybody's being a little shy this morning, so that's okay. So it looks like 4 of you have started your transformation. A few of you are thinking about it, and good that no one said they finished it. Everybody basically said it's important to very important, the role of analytics in the transformation. And from AI, 2, that's pretty exciting. I'd love to hear about that. Say they're already using AI in some shape or form within finance. So that's good news. It's a little better than I would have expected. So just to give you a little perspective, I think those of you that said you're already using it, you're in good stead. So all right, we have a lot of material to share with you this morning. We'll try to keep it fast and fluid. So kind of buckle your seatbelts. Let's go. And
Hang in there.
All right. So right, virtual seatbelt, I guess. Okay. So Julie and I get asked all kinds of questions on lots of topics. as it relates to finance transformation. We tried to distill them down to a few that we hear relatively consistently when we speak with our customers around the world. What are the catalysts? Why are people doing this? How do we look at some critical success factors? Julie's got some great perspective on that. What success looks like. How does technology play a role to transformation, and then more specifically, the role of analytics. How does Oracle Analytics help take some of the work out of engaging with data? And I'll explain what the role of natural language generation, for example, can help. And then, what do we think you should do to get started or to advance if you've already gone down this path? So first, we'll just kick it off and sort of explore, what are the drivers for finance? And it's not just about cost takeout. While we certainly are in a period where everyone is looking to increase free cash flow from operations, reduce our risk, and really provide better business guidance around the financial implications of decisions, I also see that finance organizations are taking this opportunity to explore how do we improve the productivity so we can do better business partnering. But also things like transformation have been driven by business model change, whether you're being disrupted by innovative startups. I find that several of our banking customers are actually taking a fresh look at the technology landscape overall and seeing how they can apply it to improve the finance operation. And that really is exciting because they've come to us with a series of innovative use cases and said, we think these are how we can apply some of your new technology, Oracle, and we'd love to partner with you on that. Julie, you want any perspectives or comments from you on?
I mean, we're seeing a lot of transformations are no surprise driven by business model changes. There's still, in spite of you think the world was stable, there's still lots of mergers and activities going on, and many companies are looking to obviously simplify their estate and bring finance together into a more effective structure and organization that meets that changed business model. We're even seeing some divestitures as well. So people actually having to, spin off parts of their business, and therefore one of my clients, for example, actually was spun off from a large financial institution actually. And one of the things they had to do was they need an accounting system. And the beauty of some of technologies like Oracle's cloud today is you can do that pretty quickly. So they just know that they've got their finance engine running, and then they can focus on actually the value add things that you've talked about. So actually helping drive the business forward. And then the other one, I guess, which we're seeing quite a lot as there's disruption generally across the world in any industry nowadays, is company restructures. So businesses are actually radically restructuring themselves at the moment to meet a kind of different approach for consumers, to meet things like the sustainability agendas that's really starting to get high up on people's business agenda. And that's actually often driven not just from the board level, but actually finance is the first place that actually this touches, because actually it changes the way that you're actually going to structure your entities, how you actually want to report, how you actually need to forecast and start using some of the technologies that are available today. So yeah, it's an interesting world. So transformation is continuous, always going on. Yeah.
So it's a great, interesting you bring that up, because working with a consumer goods company, and suffice it to say, they are really advanced in their finances, really advanced in their use of data. And to your point about sustainable advantage, they're using this time to accelerate M&A acquisition because of changing consumer demand, demand on products that are sustainably sourced and produced. And finance is actually leading this discussion with the business. And it's because they have, a world-class analytics platform inside their company, and they can engage with the business in a new ways. So agree with your perspective. Unfortunately, as we know, not all of our customers and clients around the world, as you know, face the same sort of situation. In fact, Gartner did a study asking business partners about what they thought about finance, not finance about themselves. And only 35% said that that finance provides them great guidance. And that's certainly not a pretty number. I know we love numbers in accounting and finance, and if I really explore why that is, I think the culprit here is data, and the way we think about, the way we govern, manage, use, share, and analyze data. I had a customer in Australia recently say, the minute you start using VLOOKUPs, stop.
Fair enough.
You lost. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, only power Excel users know what that comment is, but
yeah.
Certainly. What's that?
I would say one of the things I think that's quite interesting. I think finance actually. Finance needs to be braver. We need to shout, actually across the business of our skills in managing data and analyzing data. It's a fundamental core skill of anyone with an accounting or management accounting skill set. And unfortunately, it's too closeted, too hidden away in the closet. And actually, I've got one client where finance were going through a transformation, but actually they use that as an opportunity to embrace operations, embrace other parts of the business, and actually go proactively to them and say, we're spinning the numbers. You think it's the pounds or the euros and the pence and the dollars, but actually what these mean is actually still relevant to you on the operations side, and we're going to bring that to you and blend it with your operational numbers so that you can actually see cause and effect. And it's a mindset change, and I think we're getting there. As new people come into the finance role out of university, new qualifications, maybe those of us longer in the tooth, it's time for us to embrace it, because all these new people coming in, they're digital natives, as the term goes.
Yeah, no question.
And I think they're keen and excited to bring that kind of skill set to other parts of the business. It's not just about the numbers. It's actually about setting the strategy and the direction and helping the board and other parts of the business to look forward. It's all about forward looking to me. What happened in the past is great, but you can influence the forward.
Yeah,
and that's where analytics comes in.
Yeah, for sure. And it's as you know, I teach analytics at a few universities, and it's about the questions we ask. Yeah. And as we have new talent join finance, they ask fresh questions because perhaps they don't know the complexity of answering those questions, but they return to first principles. So in that context, what do you see as the top success factors when people are thinking about this topic?
Yeah, I mean, it's there are many and to think, but I think the 5 key ones that we focus on with our clients: building consensus, and actually the CFO and the finance function has a great role to play in that. It is actually at the linchpin across the different areas within an organization. At the end of the day, that's the bit that connects all parts of the business together. And consensus in a finance transformation is not just about what the program is, it's about understanding what the outcomes are that you're trying to achieve for the organization. So going back to the drivers we talked about earlier, whether that's operational efficiency, whether that's driving more insight to the business, understanding upfront as part of the program what that ambition is, and bringing everyone along as part of that journey. I think often a finance, because it's called finance transformation, people think that finance. Well, yes, that's a key part of it, but actually it does impact the rest of the business, and you need to keep people involved in part of that. The other thing, obviously relevant to you and what we're talking about here, is data. Getting the data right, making sure that the data is then able to support that forward-looking decision making. That you frankly, you can automate, you know, the bringing the numbers in, using automation in the right places where it's mandrolic is what we used to say in the old days. You know, get it done, automate it, focus your people on the high value stuff. But that in itself actually means that you need to think about the skills and talents of your people. You know, have you got the right capability? You probably have, but actually pulling people away from the mandrolic tasks and actually giving them the permission to focus on the things that actually add real value to the business. One of the things that I've seen in a number of companies is actually analytical skills, and data skills. Of course, they inherently tend to sit in the IT function. They tend to sit purely for historical reasons, often in the marketing or the customer insight area. Finance have them as well, but actually it's dotted around the business. And there's a lot of push, I'm sure you've seen with some of your clients, to create centers of excellence, not from the perspective of creating a new function to be an overhead, but actually because the skills of how to use data effectively are really important, and they can be brought to parts of the business that are less experienced in that. And then the last piece, of course, critical success factor. Don't bore the ocean, you know, have a vision, set your North Star, but actually continuously give value back to the business using agile methodologies, being iterative and dynamic. Because every win, every quick win you gets people's attention. It gets people more interested in actually coming to the table. Hey, I want some of that. I'm sure you've seen that. I've confessed, you know, I was at Oracle working with you and Hyperion for many years, and you know, we experienced times there where we were dragged away to use proper dashboards, proper analytics. Don't argue about the numbers anymore. You know, we've got the numbers right. Argue about or debate what we're going to do about the numbers to make them what they're meant to be. It's an exciting time, and you know, I'm passionate.
Yeah, for sure.
Data. It's
for sure. Thank you for sharing that. I certainly share your perspectives on these. I think of sort of data as the ground floor, but the talent piece is so essential. I know the head of finance for Tesla is a co-board member with me at Cal Poly, and he's fluent in R and fluent in Python, and he's in finance. And, you know, he's a young professional, very ambitious. And so I'm not suggesting that we need deep data scientist skills within finance, but we definitely need to think about both the scientific and the softer skills as we look to make an impact going forward. So if we think about, and this is not really an exhaustive, but rather an illustrative list of how do we know when we have really turned the corner on transformation. And it's not just about automation, okay? Automation is most definitely critical, and I know a lot of the Accenture research has illustrated a tremendous amount of finance operations can be automated. I know you're going to share some perspective on that in a second. But when we can shift from 20% of our time with the business to 80% of the time with the business, we certainly have reached a milestone. When we can automate things like variance analysis in our management reporting pack every quarter, and we're not using, you know, really talented people to do really low cognitive work, that's also a sign of success. When we're not just doing bottoms up or even top down forecasting, but we're actually informing those forecasts through data science and AI types of models. And I think the last piece is really important given current events here, which is the more we can move to a dynamic, agile modeling beyond what we can do in column and row in a spreadsheet, the better and more responsive we will be able, and the more value we'll be able to contribute back to the business. And certainly, you know, that's been, you know, a flagship case for Essbase for decades. I spoke with a retailer last week, and in the U.S., and they basically said, without Essbase, we couldn't keep food on shelves. So, so it's quite important that we, to your point, sort of set a vision for the future. And these are just a couple of examples of what that might look like. we have a number of customers today who have achieved tremendous success. Several have been speaking at the Oracle Analytics Summit online. So FedEx and Gary from GE have been speaking in Europe. Renee at Arcadis has done some amazing things around improving cash management. And Skanska, which is an engineering and construction firm up in Sweden, has done an awesome job at looking at employee safety while on the job, and also improving their banking relationships by improving transparency. So there's a wide range of what I think are pretty innovative use cases using what we have today. Now, broadly speaking, I sort of think about the role that technology plays is around efficiency and effectiveness. So robotic process automation is really about automation and improving efficiency. And analytics, which we're going to focus more on this morning, is really about improving the effectiveness of finance. And this is just a study by a third party that says, you know, self-service visualization is the foundation, but they go on to say that advanced analytics is quite important. And in that bucket, they put things like predictive modeling and scenario analysis. So I guess I'm going to turn it back to you, Julie, and sort of say, you know, what's your perspective on the role of analytics overall transformation process?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can probably guess my answer. It's central. It's core to it all. We've done, Accenture's done some fantastic research under the hashtag CFO Reimagined. And I think that the headline of this research, you know, from bottom line to front line, is exactly what it's all about. So the analogy I give is, you know, if you're going out to buy a car, you don't check if the engine works. You kind of just know the engine's going to work. But what you're interested in is what does it feel like for you? You know, what's the driving experience, and actually, you know, how you can actually exploit that engine to take you maybe one day on a holiday when we get out of lockdown to visit your family.
When borders are open, sure.
Yeah, you know, little details like that. And really, analytics, I think, is the same to finance transformation, right? Nobody questions, does the accounting engine work? Does the ERP engine work? Of course, you know, you have to do work around that. You know, you have to configure it to what suits your business. But fundamentally, you know that part of the transformation is going to work. Where you should really be focused on is the reporting side, the forward-looking insight that you can bring to the business to the point that actually adds value and improves the business partner and that you bring out to the other parts of the organization. And if I'm really honest, a bit of a personal bugbear I have is, you know, when clients go through a finance transformation, inherently there's a natural tendency to focus on the technology, to focus on the implementation of the solution. Mm-hmm. My view is we kind of need to change that emphasis. You know, yes, you need to implement the technology, but, you know, that's almost like buying a car. You know, you just buy it, it works. You bring fantastic people like Accenture in to make sure it does work. Actually, not enough of the project, and I think not enough of the implementation time is actually given to what sits on top from analytics. And I find that quite frustrating. I mean, I've been involved in a couple of major transformation projects, finance transformation projects for companies, where as part of that, we've been asked to brief them on the possibility of analytics. And part of that is helping finance to actually understand that their job is changing, that they can actually view things differently, that the things that they've historically either found too hard to do, don't have time to do, or have relied perhaps on using spreadsheets because it's convenient, that actually you don't need to do that anymore. You can actually change the mix of your workload, and actually the back end stuff is done now. You can actually start thinking about those questions that the business really wants you to ask about. Things like, you know, working capital. You know, have I got enough working capital, or what's the projection of my working capital? How could I maybe adjust some of the drivers of working capital in my business to bring a real bottom line improvement on that? And of course, by doing things like that, you free up working capital. You can start to innovate. in parts of the business. So there's actually a really significant trade-off for that. So analytics core, and I think it's the it's not had a strong enough voice, in my opinion, in the finance transformations. It's too much about the efficiency, the effectiveness, simplification. Let's get on to the high value stuff. That's where analytics is.
Right. I would say, stop reporting the past and start preparing for the future, right? Which was just have to move towards that. So over the last 6 months or so, I've been working with our finance customers and sort of formed a point of view that in terms of analytics overall, there's 3 things that I think we ought to consider. As Julie indicated with their critical success factor number 2, sort of start with the data. And in our perspective, we call that a converged data platform. I'll explain what I mean. But in that case, what we're trying to do is reduce data duplication, reduce reconciliation efforts between systems and people, and really create a foundation that we can use across the organization, not just within finance. The second area is around AI, which I'm passionate about how its role can really change our work and take the work out of data. We said we were losing the battle to data, so what do we mean? So I'll give you a couple of examples there. And the last thing is something that looks easy on PowerPoint and looks hard in life, which is connecting these insights so that we have a common view. I wouldn't say that there's a single version of the truth, because, for example, if you ask how many countries are there in the world, it depends. It depends if you're the UN or the International Olympic Committee. And so we have to get good enough, but we do have to make a real effort to connect the insights to improve collaboration. And so when I talk a little bit about a converged data platform, it's not just the data we need to do our close and consolidation process. It's not just the data we need to do our annual forecast or our annual budget or our quarterly forecast or monthly forecast. It's really a platform that can provide insights about real-time and period end, day-to-day operational, what's my cash position by country, by currency, but also answer strategic questions around what if we divest this business, or what if we expand or contract in a particular market. It's got to combine financial and operational, historical and predictive. And in our case, our Oracle data platform is really based on the Oracle Cloud technology that serves a wide range of consumers inside the organization, and also has a wide range of storage formats. So one of the critical ones in this case is obviously Essbase, which is part of our data platform. Essbase is used extensively around the world and represents data as people think about it, not as we like to store it. But we also have a need to do things like spatial analysis and graph analysis to understand fraud and to prevent against money laundering, as an example, if you're in the communications industry. So there is a need for a common data platform that can handle a whole range of analytical cases, not just our data warehouse, if you will, where we centralize reporting and analysis. AI plays an interesting role. So we're not thinking we're going to turn every finance manager into a data scientist, but rather augment the cognitive work of finance professionals by putting AI inside of process. So making recommendations about how to improve data, making recommendations about what the correlations or outliers are in data. So we call that augmented. Augmented analytics really, if you will, it's like having an analytical co-pilot that is looking over your shoulder and trying to provide some guidance about things you might not have found. It's a way to reduce bias and a way to improve collaboration and efficiency. So it's a given today that analytics systems support self-service, and this is certainly part and parcel to our product strategy. That's not the intent of today, but any transformation effort has to assume that finance should be able to do their own work and not depend on other teams to analyze data. The skills have to get better, certainly, but we need to be able to do our own analysis. And as I've thought about the question, well, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this too, but as I thought about this topic about, well, where can AI be applied, right? This is all great theory, Rich and Julie, but what's the practical application, right? And I've come up with at least 12 examples. I won't go through all of them here today, but there are certainly ways in which AI can help improve the forecasting and prediction component by identifying hidden patterns, by helping provide better guidance on which drivers to use and not use for forecasting, that can select metrics from economic data as inputs to the process. We also find that it can help simplify the narrative process, which is doing that management report every quarter. Certainly some of that can be improved through AI. On the core sort of ERP or core financial systems, we see AI can automate account reconciliations. In GE's case, the story that Gary shared had a lot to do with intercompany eliminations and transfer pricing. Organizations of their scale spend millions of dollars trying to do that. And he has found some ways to use AI to lower that cost, improve that process, and greatly increase the quality and accuracy of the transfer pricing overall. So what's your perspective on this, Julian? You've seen some great examples as well.
Yeah, and I think, if I'm honest, it's not an area that's exploited enough. I think AI is absolutely around the accounting back office side. There's huge opportunity there. I have a client that has a very complex revenue recognition process, which is historically very manual based, often run on spreadsheets. Fantastic opportunity for applying AI. So yeah. I think there's a number of ways of looking at AI within finance. That there's kind of the point solutions, finding the places where actually AI can be applied in point parts of your process. And that can be some real quick wins. But I think the next thing is to actually think strategically again about where you embed it across the whole cycle, because we've seen a number of clients experiment with this, that they put it in one or two processes. Understandably, people are a little bit nervous about it. It's perceived to be a black box. So they kind of want to test the water. And invariably, that's proved to be very successful if you get the use case right and apply it in the right place. They get huge improvement in efficiency, as well as new insights that they hadn't realized, and power in the outcomes of these things. But it's then keeping that momentum and making sure you continue it. And I think a lot of, again, finance need to find the time to invest in the time to spend on these things. It's too easy to kind of just say, I haven't got the time to do it, I'll do it another day. But actually, if you get on with it now, it'll give you benefits to a long way in the future. So we've done some work for clients where actually they've even looked at things like obviously chatbots, embedding chatbots in part of the process to take away some of the work and using AI around that and the thinking around that, so that actually becomes human free for part of the processes and the steps. Yep. That's hugely beneficial as well. And we've even done a little bit of experimenting with robots and voice. So actually doing verbal interaction with your Alexa or your devices. I think people like the idea from an innovation perspective. How often finance will sit at their home office asking who hasn't paid their invoices today or something. Maybe that's best, but I think that's the top potential. We do it for our bank accounts, so why wouldn't you do it for your company's finance process?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think
yeah,
it's
I call that the consumerization of analytics. Yeah, it's like we do quite a bit of analysis at home. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and I think for AI, there's actually huge opportunity for it. So it was interesting to hear on the poll that some of the people have actually started experimenting with that. So and the other thing is, you know, just switch it on. I mean, a lot of systems today have these facilities. Just take the time to switch it on, you know, and apply it to the right processes and test it out. It's an important.
I hear what you're saying is be brave.
Yeah, be brave. That's right.
Yeah, so here's a few just other examples of some of the customers that have been speaking at the summit on their use of analytics in finance. National Health Services, over £1 billion of savings on a wide range of cases, one of which is fraud. Mentioned GE. You can check these out on the OA Summit later. I just want to give you a really fast little quick example of what natural language can do to automate some things. So if I have a canvas, I create 2 visualizations and I change one of them from a chart to a narrative. This narrative is automatically written in 28 languages. And as I bring more data over from the if you will, the common data platform into the view, the dynamic narrative automatically adjusts. So if I, let's say, create one more visualization, drop it to the top, now I can wire these things together really fast, just to say when I click on one particular delivery mode, like delivery truck, the narrative automatically adjusts. For me, variance analysis is ripe for replacing humans writing these kinds of things. Having run that function previously, the amount of time we spend writing this revenue line is up 10% year over year, and Y% on a trailing 12, and Z% on a quarter on quarter, that is just nonsense. Nonsense today if we're writing that. So there's a real great opportunity to automate a variety of narratives, and these aren't fixed. Over time, these can be guided by the finance team, if you will, adding training data to those types of natural language. So I want to just close on one last quick topic, and then we'll suggest a couple of next steps. In terms of connecting business insights, we need to do a better job as finance leaders at connecting not just data, but also plans, targets, goals, KPIs, and data definitions. But now we have a new player, and this new player is this analytical co-pilot or machine learning algorithm. And I do think that's an opportunity to embrace. We have come up with a new set of products that we announced and shipped earlier this calendar year called Fusion Analytics Warehouse. These are a set of packaged analytic applications for Oracle SaaS and in the future NetSuite. These are more than just cute little demos and content packs like our competitors have, but rather fully managed analytic applications that are governed and supported by Oracle. And for finance, we have developed a whole series of KPIs, but that's important so that it be connected to other business data. So the degree to which you use Oracle HCM or supply chain or CX, we're going to provide one common data model across all of those. And in the environment itself, if you will, put the magic inside. So not how many times do we write reports that look at receivables or cash or working capital or our AP efficiencies. All of that's going to be part and parcel to the analytic application, as well as a series of KPIs and metrics around profitability, fixed assets, and projects in the future. So with that, I guess maybe we'll just close on one last topic. I see there's about 5 questions in the Q&A, so we should try to get to some of those as well. So I'll just turn it back to you to say, you know, what do people do to get started, and then we'll turn back to the Q&A from our customers. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rich. So I guess just to wrap it up, where to start? I mean, going back to, I think, some of the points I've already made, you need to focus on what the outcomes are and what the enterprise value is of your transformation. What is it that North Star is that you're trying to achieve? And not just for finance, but across the whole board. You know, finance touches everyone. So the business outcomes can be actually very significant across the whole organization. The second thing is to think about, you know, where are you now? I love this slide because actually it's one that I used recently with a client to get a view of, you know, their ambition. They wanted to shift from being transactionally focused to outcome focused. When I presented this slide to them, they actually said, actually today we're not even on the slide. We're past left-hand side. You know, we actually haven't invested in finance for a long time. We've been too busy growing the business, you know, focusing on the front end of the business. And actually they've now reached the point where the back end finance is creaking. So they said, actually, we don't even feel we've got a stable foundation. We need to get the basics right. But once you start moving forward, you then get into the analytics piece. You get into the areas of actually being insight driven, applying intelligence, and that really forward looking and focusing where you need to be. So understanding where you are now is important. And then, of course, ultimately defining what is the journey for your company. You know, what is the right journey for your company across a number of the areas. So not just about the data, the platform, the technology, actually about your talent, you know, what skills you've got, also about your processes. You can't forget the processes. You know, you only have systems, you only have transformation because you're trying to achieve a certain set of processes. And there's been a huge focus around standardization. And again, nowadays with things like Oracle's, you know, fusion systems, a lot of those bring standard processes with them, and actually just, you know, get that done, move on to the high value stuff, the analytics. So
yeah, cool.
Those are some of my suggestions. There are probably many others, but they're a big thing to focus on.
Thank you very much. And so I'll just, I think, I will just pause this here. I'd like to get to some of the questions that there's actually been quite a few questions come up. I'll handle one in the chat and then I'll switch over to the Q&A. I'm not sure if it got moved over there, but how comfortable are external auditors with the use of AI, especially black box types such as neural networks? I actually think, it's a great question. And interesting is that auditors use AI to do audit. So I think they're quite comfortable with it. I don't believe that we will see governments regulate AI. I've had a number of conversations with public officials in Europe and in the US on this topic. There are a range of ethical dilemmas that AI presents. But I think auditors are getting more comfortable with this topic. I would be surprised to see real issues with that. And so let's
and also
go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, you know, the auditors are interested in, you know, are the numbers right, and reconciliation. Auditors, ironically, are more interested in the historical numbers and the future numbers. That's their job. So actually, even if you've used AI to automatically do reconciliations or provide insight on that, you still got the numbers there. So actually, the auditors are pretty comfortable. I agree with you.
Yeah. So all right. So working with I'm going to paraphrase these just for time. Lots of customers working with lots of clients who are using OAC, and finance is kind of happy with just Excel and SmartView. You know, the question becomes, how do we get them from entry level to realizing the value of what they have? I think this, so the question is, how do you get people unstuck? Maybe that's the best way to paraphrase it.
And I think part of that is finding the individuals that are prepared to do it. Forcing things on people is never a good thing to do, but there will always be a few advocates within an organization. Find those advocates, get them showing the value of it. For one of my clients, we actually had a senior guy actually around regulatory reporting, and he was a huge advocate of visualizations. You know, he knows, you need the detail underneath it. But actually the power for him was having visualizations, because that's what he actually needs to use to get across his point to regulators, to the board, etc. And we, by winning him over, you know, that actually kind of became the catalyst for other people in the organization to actually embrace using those sorts of things in analytics rather than sticking to the spreadsheets. You know, it's a gradual process, but you need to find your advocates. You need to find your people that actually stand up there. And there'll come a point where actually, if the leadership are doing it that way, then you know, others will follow very quickly. So it's having that high value person to lead the charge, really.
Thank you, Julie. So I'm going to take one last question, then I'll turn it back to you, Duncan, to wrap up. I know we're running a little late here. So how does AI take the bias out of spreadsheet analysis? And in this case, my view here is that AI lets the data do the talking. There's sort of two schools of thought. You know, storytelling is bad, storytelling is good. Well, when we put data science, therefore AI, into the story, at least we have a chance of having a more foundational perspective. So AI can let the data do the talking. It can allow finance customers to see patterns that they hadn't even looked for. The biggest challenge we see with financial and analytics is we go, a senior finance person or operations person says, go find data to support this hypothesis. And so we do. And the inductive kind of perspective would be, tell me what the data is saying. And that's what AI can really help, I think, change the perspective. Okay. So I know we're running late. Julie, I'd like to thank you very much for your long-term partnership and collaboration. I always love listening to you and working with you. I wish you the best and health and happiness. Thank you very much for your time today. And I hope all of you got a few ideas from us. And we'd love to hear your feedback. And with that, we'll close for today, and I'll turn it back to you. Thanks again, Julie. Greatly appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It's been good talking with you.
Likewise.
Thank you, Julie and Rich, for a fascinating session. Just to let everyone know that next Thursday we have a customer, Michael Curtis of ProBuild, talking about their finance and digital transformation. And for past and future sessions, please do visit www.oracle.com/OA Summit, and there you'll find sessions that are coming up and previous sessions that are on demand. But do join us for Michael Curtis next week. Thanks again, and do stay safe. Thank you.